Hi, Ash Marshall Dell of the Attuned to podcast, and today I am joined by the wonderful Dr. Lino Martinez, a psychologist and author of the book Little Less Fear, as well as a fabulous website and book by the same title. And what's so fabulous about the website itself is it is a plethora of resources for people with LGBTQIA, rare genetic diseases, disabilities, Dharma and Buddha, spirituality, poetry and prose, addiction and mental health. There are so many links and resources to help anyone with um, finding what they need to help them in their lives. And it's just such a wonderful way to allow people to access so many things in just one place. And of course, the core message is also beautiful. It's with a little less fear, we're a bit more open, which so much comes when we're more open. So amazing. So I'm super curious. First of all, what led you to do and create all that you have?
Yeah, there's a lot that I've created, and there's a lot that I keep creating. And what led me, I mean, it's got to be, I'm almost certain that I incarnated knowing that this was all part of my blueprint, because creating became very natural to me. I started writing when I was 7 years old, and I remember being in my room, and I remember it actually came from being depressed, a depressed kid. And I was a depressed kid because my mother was an alcoholic, and I didn't get much attention or love from her, physical love, and that much attention, because her attention was with the bottle. So at the time, I didn't know how to tune out depression. I was a second grader, and I can't really say that I was really depressed, actually. Now that I'm going to correct myself, but I know that I was in my head a lot and feeling like something was missing. And at the time, what was missing was the love of a mother. And so what I did that came natural to me was grab a pen and paper, and I started writing poetry. And I remember reading it back out loud and thinking like, whoa, this came out of me. Like how, I mean, my spelling, I was a spelling bee champion as a kid. So, I mean, all this stuff came natural to me. The only thing I can say is it carried over from a past life, and it carried over to help guide me in the direction to where I'm at now at almost 43 years old. So, yeah.
That's pretty wild. 7-year old having that much um, understanding of their own capability. Because often, as kids, you get a lot of, you have to do it this way, or you have to do this or that or the other. And you just went right into creation and
I
knowing
did.
that in yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's really interesting the way you say that, knowing that. Yeah, it was more of a knowing rather than an understanding. I didn't understand why I was doing it, but I knew, like, an inherently knowing feeling that this was going to help me out. And it was like flowing. It was almost like channeling, because these words were coming through me, and I was just letting it out. It was really amazing.
That's awesome. It's so
Thank you.
beautiful when you have that sort of flow and it just, woo, so easily and it feels good inside because you're expressing yourself and you express yourself in a lot of ways through your podcast as well as this whole book you wrote and your own poetry which you share with others for inspiration. And I'm curious, were you writing the whole time from 7 all the way through, and then even when you went into your program to become a psychologist, was that sort of a continual self-expression mode for you, or were there sort of starts and stops throughout that whole journey?
There always starts and stops, but the stops don't last longer than like maybe 2 months. So from the time I was a kid to now, I mean, I'm constantly writing, and whether they're 3 lines or 2 pages, the flow comes out. And I did this last night. Yesterday, I was meditating on my balcony, and I was remembering this TikTok video of some spiritual advisor that said, "Hey, try seeing if you can be creative with your eyes closed. See what you write, so without thinking about it." But as I was about to write, I thought, well, how can I not think? I mean, it kind of like the thoughts come with feelings, and the feelings translate into an action, which is writing on a piece of paper. So I couldn't, I tried to do that, and I was just sitting there with my eyes closed and my pen on my paper, and I was like, well, if I just focus, I'm not really interpreting feelings. And the way that I interpret feelings is by thinking, or just, I guess, going more into the words that impact that current emotion that I'm going through. And it translates like a piece of art on a piece of paper. So I then cleared my mind and said, okay, right. And then I just started writing with my right hand. I did it my way. So one thing that I've noticed from creating is that a lot of people all over the world are going to get directions from other people in the world, but most of the time those directions is what helped that person. So you have to find your own connection with yourself and what helps you interpret your own personal language, your own personal energy, your own personal frequency. And when you find your own channel, go with it. Trust yourself that it's coming from your higher self, from your divine, from God's energy, and it turns into love. And then that's when you start to flow.
Oh, that's so beautifully stated. Yeah, because we all have our own very meaningful connection within ourselves. And when you really tune into that deeply and allow it to come out, obviously, we have to clear things that we've had programmed or patterned on us, by society, culture, religion, life. And then once you start clearing more and more and really tuning in, it flows more and more and more, and you achieve that deep, deep sense of yourself through your expression. It's
Yeah, I
such a
think I can
fabulous
share it with you.
connection.
Let me grab my book. 1 second. So yeah, I was right. I won writing contests when I was a kid. I got to be on newspapers and stuff. And if people tune into their achievements in their lifetime, that will guide them through to their life purpose and what brings them joy. So just remember the things you've achieved naturally. So
Yes.
here's what I ended up writing when I was done trying to follow the TikTok advice. This was my own energy here. I feel the presence is near, closer than the truth has ever felt. I am inclined to feel rather than comprehend. It is my understanding that feelings is the language of the divine, and I feel love. So that's what I wrote.
That's beautiful. And
Thank you.
yes, it is. Divine is love, like the most unimaginably unconditional, wonderful love. It's so good. And it's so fabulous that you tuned into that.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Wow. So, with all of that, you talk about because there's an openness in how you share. So, I'm really curious, what does open mean to you? And how, in a way, did you arrive at that? Was it a series of steps, or was it just like another knowing? Or was it sort of trial and error as figured yourself out and how you wanted to be in the world and what you were doing, with all that you have created already?
Yeah, I like how you asked the question, what does open mean to me? Because open is going to mean something to everybody. Everybody is their own individual. But yeah, definitely it came with a trial and error, and also quieting my mind and quieting my voice. But I guess I had to quiet my voice a lot growing up as a kid because I knew. I mean, when I first grew up, I was brought a female. I was brought up female. I was born a female. That was the gender that was assigned to me. And but I felt like a boy inside. I always felt like a boy. I felt like a man. Well, I feel like a boy. I'm barely now feeling like a man, but I felt like a male gender. That's what I felt that I wanted, that I felt mostly close to expressing myself in a more masculine energy. And I wasn't allowed to express that part of myself as a kid. And my mother forced me to wear bows in my hair and dresses. And when I became a teenager, I got talked bad down to a lot unless I wore makeup because girls always wear makeup. And it was a lot of nonverbal abuse, where my mother would give me dirty looks and ignore me a whole day if I didn't look the way that she wanted me to look. So it was really awful going through that and having to quiet myself while trying to find myself at the same time. And also at the time I identified as a lesbian, and that also wasn't allowed in a Latino Catholic household. So I often got, how do you know you're a lesbian if you haven't been with a guy? And I'm like, well, I'm 12 years old. I don't want to be with a guy right now, But anytime I talk that way it was like, you don't talk to your mom like that, you know? So I quickly learned to shut up. And the more I shut up, the more I it became poison to my body. And I was born with a rare genetic disease, but it started to manifest really awfully growing up, with a lot of tummy aches. My growth was stunted. At 12 years old, I was 54 pounds. I didn't have an appetite. I was really skinny, bags under my eyes. I mean, my everything was stunting on me. And now that I can look back, it's because I wasn't able to speak my truth. I wasn't able to talk what I needed to talk, and talk the talk and walk the walk. You know, I was walking someone else's walk and talking someone else's talk. And by the way, if listeners are hearing this, I want everyone to know that I've forgiven my mom, that I love her deeply, and that I know that however she brought me up is however she was brought up, and all that is explained in my book. But these are the traumas that I went through in this current human life to help me be open. And what led me to actually be super open was, after almost dying from this rare genetic disease, experiencing over 40 surgeries in 10 years, and losing my voice for 2 years, I became very spiritual. I learned sign language. And it was during that time of silence, when I learned sign language and found my higher self, that I started to learn about the chakra system. And I started to learn that if I don't speak my truth, these chakras are going to shut down, and now it's going to create disease in my body. And I started to realize that a lot of this disease that was trapped in my body, dis-ease, meaning not at ease, and discomfort, was because I was in discomfort and I wasn't speaking my truths. So I made a pact with my higher self. I made a pact with God that if my voice came back, I would use it to motivate the world. I went to school, got my doctorate in clinical psychology, and I'm not going to be a clinical psychologist because I found my truth within that time. I graduated 12, almost 13 years ago, and so much has happened since then. My voice is back, it's strong. And I've realized that if I'm not open with myself, other people are not going to be open, and my chakra systems are going to be closed down. I'm not closed for business, I'm open. So I become aligned with my higher self. My voice is stronger than ever. My vocal cords are strong. I've got full control of my larynx and all my muscles here and on my neck. And I'm using it to motivate people with my podcast, speaking my truth. Yes, I'm a trans man. I'm a small man, 4'11", 95 pounds, but I've got the biggest heart of gold, and I'm going to keep on going.
I'm trying not to cry. That's so beautiful.
Thank you. And honestly, it was hard for me to tell my story without crying at first. And even writing my book, I cried so much, and it was so hard. There were times where I was writing chapters and I was bawling, but I knew that I had to get it out. I had to get it out.
It is, because I think there's a big lack of understanding in mainstream culture that our emotions, we store them in our bodies.
Yes.
Literally, all of that. And it impacts you so drastically, because emotions are actually hormone chemicals, and they literally cause so many issues in your body and impact everything within you. So, yes.
Yeah. Ash, and speaking of it being stored in the body, so one of the first organs to go in my body was my urinary bladder. I lost my ability to pee. I was slowly losing my ability to pee, my ability to urinate. And by the time I was 26, I was pushing really hard for urine to come out, and I barely got any few drops. But to make the long story short, I found an incredible doctor at UCLA, a urologist. But after many surgeries of trying to save my bladder, it was unsalvageable. So by the time I was 33, I had a crazy surgery, 14-hour surgery, where I lost my urinary bladder, I lost my urethra, I lost my appendix, and 30 inches of my small intestine, all in one big surgery, 2 blood transfusions. It's completely changed my life. And I feel that a big part of my human life was lost at that point, because such a natural thing that people take for granted, to sit down and pee, at the time I was sitting down, or and guys stand up and pee, whatever it was, my ability to pee was gone. So I had to learn a different way to urinate, and that was just sticking a 12-inch catheter in my abdomen, also known as a stoma, and I had to accept my new life. So I often asked myself, when I spent 10 years in the hospital, what did I do to deserve this? What did I do to deserve this? I'm such a good person. I've got a big heart. I have so much love. Why am I going through this? And now that I've interviewed countless of spiritual people on my podcast, including yourself, Ash, and and have come in alignment with my higher self, and then understanding the chakra system, I can see now that the chakra, the sacral chakra, which is a chakra number 2, if you're counting from your root up, that's where a lot of negative stored energy, where it gets stored if you're not able to express your sexuality, if you're not able to express your sexual power, if you're not able to express what you want to eat, what's good for your body, all of your desires, all of that stuff is stored in that specific chakra. So it's now I can see and I can look back that it's no coincidence that I lost my ability to pee, when that is where all that energy is stored. I feel that had I had the ability, and again, I've accepted that this is my journey and I've incarnated to tell this story for a reason. But what I'm saying is, I can see now that had I had given myself incarnated to find a different path where there was more acceptance at an earlier age, that I was able to express my masculinity and be the individual that I wanted to be, and it being okay that I liked females at a young age, most likely I probably wouldn't have lost my urinary bladder. But I lost it. It happened. I love this incredible body that I have. It's got an incredible wisdom, and I love it. I can't even believe that I've gone through so much and I'm still able to keep going and keep telling the story to motivate others. And that's what my purpose in life is.
And you are a gift to the world. You
I'm
are.
sorry.
You are a gift to the world.
So are you. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Right. It's that is an amazing story because so many people struggle in so many different ways, and to be able to hear a story and know that someone went through something and came out stronger and filled purpose and feel good and love their bodies,
Yes.
that is amazing. Yeah, yeah. So to be able to open and share your story, what a gift to the world. Truly.
I
Yeah.
appreciate that. I want also people to know that it wasn't easy accepting this body. That I went through a lot of who's gonna love this body, who else is gonna love me with these disabilities. I have a feeding tube, I'm a short man, I have a small penis, all these totally these things that didn't even matter, because what matters is energy. That's really what matters. There's a connection to love. There's love doesn't look at these things, love doesn't judge. True love accepts everybody equally.
Yes. Absolutely. Yes, it does. Yeah. Seriously. And your story is so inspiring. And I'm curious, was there one thing or several things that inspired you to do all of this work? Because you went through and got a psychology degree and then chose to do this rather than clinical psychology. So I'm really curious what thing or things inspired you on these particular choices that you made.
Really good question. Yeah, so I remember being 5 years old and saying, I'm going to be a doctor one day. And I kept that in my head. And I didn't know what kind of doctor. I just thought I declared it, I said it, and I put it in the universe at 5 years old. And lo and behold, I wasn't good at math growing up. I mean, I was always failing math. I was straight A student at everything else but math, numbers. And now that I know that dyslexia can actually be reversed, at the time I didn't understand dyslexia, but my brain would reverse numbers. So 21s were 12s and 89s were 98s, or 112s were 121s. So I was always constantly mixing numbers up and I didn't understand it. And I realized then that biology, in order to get a biology degree, I needed to go like calculus and do really well with math. So I became discouraged with that, and I got my bachelor's degree in communication, which it all ended up helping me now, because now that's what I'm doing. I'm communicating. So I got my bachelor's in communication with an emphasis in math and a minor in Spanish, and then I went into epidemiology for my master's degree, and I was about 2 semesters away from graduating, and I ended up dropping out. I said, I don't want to graduate. I don't want my master's in epidemiology. This isn't what I want to do. Why am I even doing this? And at that time, I became really depressed. And my father was cheating on my mother. They weren't accepting me being with a girl at the time. I had a girlfriend. And I just got so depressed. I thought, you know what? I can't be the doctor I always wanted to be. Nobody loves me in my family. Nobody even wants to talk to me. Why am I even alive? So I dug myself in this crazy pit, and I was 21 at the time. And the crazy pit of depression led me to have a suicide attempt. I overdosed on coding, and it led me to a 5150 where I was hospitalized for 5150 is a mandatory state 72-hour hold. But yeah, I woke up a couple days later because I fell in a slight kind of like a coma sedative type state from overdosing. And when I woke up in the hospital at 51 being held legally, I gave the psychiatrist a joke, and he was like, "Do you know why you're here?" And I said, "Yep, better luck next time." And he looked at me and he was like, "What do you mean by that?" And I said, "What do you think I mean by that?" I was being a total jerk. I was very upset that I woke up and that I wasn't dead. And so he said, "I'm mandatory to, because of what you just said right now, I'm gonna mandate to hold you longer than 72 hours."
Mm.
So I took a deep breath and I was like, "All right, whatever." So they wheeled me into this hospital, or where they hold people that try to hurt themselves.
Mhm.
And I was hospitalized with a bunch of elderly people. I was the youngest one. I was 21, and everybody else around me was at least 70, between 70 and 90. And I was like, "What am I doing here? Why am I here with these old folks? Why am I being locked up? Why this? Why that?" And I quickly saw that the people around me were in a completely different state of mind that I was in. So I remember my second day there, they called us in for lunch. So I walked out there and I was hanging out with these elderly folk, and I sat next to this guy. I don't remember his name. It started with an H, maybe it was Harris or Henry or something, but I think I called him Henry in my book. So I'll go with Henry. Henry was in his 90s, and Henry was wheelchair bound, and he had slit his wrists. And every time he was slicing his wrists, he was hospitalized for it. So I sat next to him and I said, "Why are you here?" And he slowly lifted up his dwindling skinny arms, his long saggy skin, and I saw his incisions and stitches. And I was taken aback, and I was like, "Why'd you do that?" And he's like, "Well," he said, "I used to be a millionaire." And he goes, "I lost it all." He said, "My wife is dead. My only son is dead. Tell me why I need to live." And I stared at him and I was silent. And I saw his sagging eyes, and his eyes were red. And I had no answer for him. And I just felt really heartbroken at that time. I didn't want him to take his life. And then I said, "Well, Henry, I think there are things in life you still need to do." And he's like what? And I said, "Well, how about this?" And I started listing things. He's like, "Been done that, done that, done that." And I said, "What about art?" He's like, "I've never been a good artist." And I said, "Well, guess what? Me neither. So we're gonna be bad artists together." So I grabbed a poster board and coloring books and pencils, he's like, "Well, what should we draw?" And I said, "Well, how about an hourglass?" And he said, "Okay." So while I'm sitting there next to this old man drawing an hourglass, he looks at me and he goes, "Well, why are you here?" And instantly I wanted to cry. And I looked at him and I was ashamed and embarrassed to tell him why I was there. Here I am, bright, young, 21, finishing my master's, like what, my whole life ahead of me. How can I even tell him that I'm trying to take my life? So I suckered up and I told him the truth. And I said, "Well, Henry, I was trying to take my life too." And he gave me the saddest look, Ash. I mean, I feel like crying right now, actually, whenever it happens to me. It's hard. It's hard. I looked at him and I saw how sincerely sad he felt that I was trying to do that at my age. And then I realized that night that I needed to change my life. And he changed my life. I mean, I'm sure his presence isn't here anymore since that was over 20 years ago. But I went into my room, my hospital room at that point, and I started to write about what my future was going to be. And I thought, what are these doctors coming in? What are they doing? Who are they? What are their degrees? How are they a doctor? So I remember a psychologist came in and I just started asking him about his career rather than talking about why I was there. I was like, "What brought you to your career? Why are you doing this? What degrees did you need? Can I do this?" And he was like, "Yes, yes, yes." So after being there for a week, I actually came out refreshed, and I had a mission afterwards. I was going to drop out of epidemiology, get my master's in psychology, and get my doctorate in psychology. And sure enough, that's exactly what I did. I started seeing a psychiatrist out of there. She put me on some antidepressants, and I became aligned with what my next purpose was. And so I completed my master's degree in psychology and I completed my doctorate in clinical psychology. But upon my completion of psychology, by that time, the genetic disease was fully manifesting at the same time. So, do you have any questions while I continue?
I one like to say, holy crap, that is
Yeah.
phenomenal. What one conversation, just that one interchange changed the direction of your life. And it's truly amazing. And it's really hard to take, honestly, that where we find the most growth in our lives is through pain.
Yeah.
Isn't it's kind of interesting. I'll say that about it. It is definitely interesting. And just what it catapulted your life to a totally different place. That's
Yeah, definitely.
phenomenal.
I'm
Yeah.
on a tear now.
Yeah. It's yeah,
Yeah. I
yeah.
see now that Henry was a spirit guide, an angel of some sort, and I'm
Well, he
just
may not be
really happy to
there.
have met
He's
him at that.
here. He's always
Yes, he
here.
is. He'll always be there.
Mhm. Which is
Hmm.
beautiful. Yeah, and it's those I think those moments of connection that even when things seem really difficult or challenging or down, we remember those moments, and I think they kind of help lift us up a little, you know? I think that's, such a way of tuning into ourselves to really deeply connect with all of the people that have led us to where we are in
Oh yeah,
ways. Yeah,
it's really beautiful.
it is. So wowzers. So with all that you have done, is there some advice that you might offer others as they're trying to accept themselves more or just working towards accepting themselves, period? Because honestly, we all have things, right, that we have not accepted. So, do you have some advice that you might offer individuals that are struggling or, whatever their story in their lives are for self acceptance?
Yes, I think that it could be a little detrimental to talk to people about self-acceptance because we don't know the type of pain that they're experiencing and the things that they still need to go through to learn the lessons that they need to catapult them to the next level, towards their own expansion. So the advice that I'd like to give to people is to love the moment that you have, and if it doesn't feel lovely, keep going with it and trust that everything is working for you, not against you. So that even if something is very painful to go through, trust that even though you don't see the light at that moment, that there's always light at the end. And it's not just a cliche. The reason why people see light when they pass away is because that's the light at the end of the tunnel. That's the eternal light. That's God's light. There's always light at the end of the tunnel, no, regardless. So trust yourself even if it hurts, and authenticity will come naturally the more you're able to flow with the abilities that come out naturally, not forcefully.
Oh, that's beautifully said. Yes, so much yes. Yeah. And it's
And it's okay to change your career in life.
oh my word, right?
It's
Yeah,
always okay. It's okay if you get your if you get four doctorates and four different degrees, that's okay. You could do whatever you want in life, and as long as it feels right to you, go in that direction.
that would be amazing. Yeah. Yeah. I remember reading, gosh, probably a decade or more, this funny thing someone had posted in Craigslist. So they put this list of 25 stories together of the most wild posts. And one was this young Harvard student that was asking for someone to come and impersonate him to take all his classes.
Wow.
For the year, you would have an apartment to stay in, and he would pay you like something like 30 or 40,000 for the year as long as you got him A's. And I was like, and here I am, this, mother, and he's like, honey, do you think I could pass for this, go to school? And he's like, honey, I
Why
don't
not?
think that's gonna work. Well, my kid might tip off them that I'm not an 18-year-old student.
Yeah.
So it was really funny. Um, the way that people sort of do things to sort of um, make their lives go in a certain way. Because if something, as you say, doesn't flow for you and it's the path that you keep getting thrust on, you have to sort of make the choice. You know what? I know this is what everyone else would like and desire or thinks. However, this is my life and this is what I would like. And yeah, it can be challenging to kind of go against the flow, when everyone in your whole life is like, you have to go to college and do this, that, or the other, and it is. And I have met people that gosh, I had a doctor one time tell me that his very best friend had like something like 4 PhDs and was
I
working on
believe it.
another one.
That's crazy.
Holy smoke. Yeah, that seems kind of like a dream job to me in a lot of ways, going to school forever, as long as it wasn't math, obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah, how amazing that would be. So yeah, it's very interesting how what does come naturally for you flows so well. And when you accept that, right, just the naturalness of yourself, that in itself is hugely transformational. So I would love to hear your take on that as well.
On my take on things coming natural to you.
Yeah, and sort of the transformative power that's contained within that, because often it's like where, you force yourself or, you're forced by whatever, just by virtue of being born into,
Mhm.
right, to do or whatever a certain way. Whereas when you sort of discover your own naturalness that's literally contained within your being,
Yes.
it's transformational, in my opinion. And I would love to
Mhm.
hear your thoughts on that as well, because it's a really it's not something we think about, is it? Right?
Yeah, it's just I guess it's challenging. I mean, I'm doing what's natural for me now, but there's more things that I want to do that's also natural that I feel that will be aligned at the right
Mhm.
time. But doing what's natural to me is what doesn't suck out too much energy, and you're able to have a lot of it without forcing it. So things that bring you joy that wouldn't necessarily bring someone else joy. Joy comes natural when you do this thing. And when you do this thing, it lights you up. It lights your true self, your higher self up. It's your love. It's your love language. And when you can express your own personal light, your own personal love language, that's that's at least what I feel is what natural is.
That's beautiful. I can't think of any better way to express that. So yeah,
My
one
biggest
last.
passion, and I was a mariachi singer when I was a teenager. I
You're
started singing
kidding.
when I was 7, and when I lost my voice for 2 years, I grieved my voice and thought I'd never sing again. And also transitioning from female to male, I thought, well, maybe I had a beautiful female singing voice. I sounded like Karen Carpenter. I had a great voice. I sounded like Katie Lang. And when my voice started to change, and lo and behold, when I completely lost it, I thought I'd never sing again. But lately, my singing voice is coming back, and nothing feels better than to being on stage, seeing people sing songs with you, and it's just an alignment with source energy that doesn't come from anywhere else but the gods. And the fact that we all have our abilities to speak these language of the gods, I can for sure let people know to not give up on life and to find your own God language. It's there. It's there. Trust me, it's there.
Oh yes, we all have that spark and that light within us because we are light, right? It's all good. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I have one last question.
Sure.
Do you have any advice for people on finding more flow in their lives? So freedom, love, openness, and wonder. So any additional words of wisdom that you might like to share?
Spend some alone time. I often hear a lot of people say, I'm lonely, I'm lonely. And I'm like, how could you be lonely? I mean, just because you're alone doesn't mean you need to be lonely. It's okay to be alone, and it's okay to accept that you're alone. When people feel lonely, it's almost always because they're out of touch with their higher self. They're out of touch with spirituality. They're out of touch with their spirit guides and angels and higher beings and ancestral gods. I mean, all this stuff is all around the unseen. And if you spend some time alone, close your eyes, feel into your thoughts, feel into your energies and subtle energies and memories and people around you, you'll start to feel what the blind feel. And what the blind feel is through their divine energy and people's divine energy. and that is where the magic happens. So don't be so hard on yourself. If you have some alone time, perhaps that's your higher self pushing you to be alone, to find your inner voice. Yeah.
Mm, awesome. That was magnificent.
Thank you, Ash.
I'm so grateful you joined me today. This was so just, good. So, so wonderful. So, thank you very much for joining me.
And thanks
And
for having me.
my pleasure. How can people find you?
Yes, people can find me on my website at www.alittlelessfear.com. All my links are there, all social platforms are there, and you can also email me through there as well.
Fabulous. Well, thank you very much.